So one of the things that had my attention over the past couple of years was a song from the Super Mario animated movie that came out within the last couple of years called, the song is called Peaches.
Peaches, 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 peaches.
At first glance, it seems like a goofy kind of song, right? It's got a villain singing about how much he loves well, in this case, it would be technically a heroine, right? In a lot of the lore, she is a kind of a damsel in distress, but in this one, she is partially a heroine. She fights for herself to some degree, and I think I think honestly, that is a good change, and also they don't neuter Mario for the sake of pushing her, and I think that that's fabulous. Anyways, back to the song specifically. So there really are 3 points of why did this song impact me so much? Why was it so effective at what it was doing? Why? And there are 3 main parts of this. First, which this is the second major part, but it's a very important part. So the first is honestly the nostalgia that the movie kicks up in general, right? So you take Nintendo, right, all the way back to the 80s and the boom that they experienced when they had the NES and then the Game Boys and all the different products, to the Nintendo 64, onto the GameCube and the Wii and just the DS, right? And all of that was wildly successful, and they were able to create a great company out of that, a great gaming company, and a lot of great games, and their flagship was Super Mario Bros. And it's still largely popular with Mario, Peach, Yoshi, Luigi, Bowser, Donkey Kong, and Diddy Kong, and the whole, just all kinds of different characters that have popped up throughout the series, and technically Birdo, right? And so they were able to create a very captivating universe. And that started ultimately with one plumber trying to save a princess from an ape, right? And then eventually Donkey Kong, I think, became popular enough, and he had his own game where he was saving his son, and Mario was the villain that then they switched off and Bowser took over and he became the flagship villain, and he spawned throughout time, and then he had a son of his own, and he had an entire kingdom full of turtle-like creatures called Koopas and mushroom-like creatures called Goombas. They were brown mushrooms, though. They weren't white, because the toadstools were white mushrooms, which sounds kind of racist, but I don't think that was the intention. So in any event, if we look at this, right, so you take that nostalgia, and I was talking about so many different characters there, right, and the other different characters that have popped out of Super Mario, and so you take this base character, right, of Mario, this plumber, right, in overalls, blue denim overalls, a red shirt, his iconic color, right, and it's just something that people can really connect to. You know, this average Joe, right? This guy he's not that skinny, right? He's got a mustache. He's Italian. He's kind of a fun guy, right? He's communist. Joking. But that is a very interesting theory, I do have to say. And Wario's a capitalist, and then Peach, of course, is a monarch. I think that that's very interesting, and there might be some underlying truth to that. But anyways, they were able to create this massive scaling universe throughout the video games, and eventually they pushed on in the Super Mario Galaxy and added more characters, and they've had a whole different, just all kinds of stuff based on this one plumber trying to save a princess from an ape, right? And it creates such a nostalgia because kids grew up loving that game and playing it. And so then it goes on to now, when they're now adults, right? They're adults, and so you're digging into that from the past. But more specifically, what I want to say is that what this song targets is specifically the lore behind Peach and Bowser, because for so many decades of the video games, Bowser is trying to steal Peach. He kidnaps Peach. He does it in so many different games, right? He just keeps going, keeps trying, right? And so there's that underlying lore of this guy that keeps trying to steal Peach. So automatically it's like, okay, why does he keep trying to steal Peach? Well, even without saying it, you can go, it's because this guy has an infatuation for her for some odd reason, right? And that's what this song encapsulates. And like, personally, this is the best movie that I've seen related to Super Mario. Of course, they had the 90s live action movie. I liked that, but it wasn't that good. And then there was also a television series that came out. I think that was on VHS. It might have been direct to video. And that didn't go very well. But anyways, so back to the thing at hand. Bowser and Peach, Bowser constantly trying to get Peach. And so it's baked into the storyline, regardless of whether or not they really talk about it, is that, you know, Bowser loves Peach, right? Because why wouldn't he? He's tried to capture her time after time after time. And so when this song pops up, right, and he starts singing the lyrics about how he's infatuated with her, it just makes sense. And so then we're going to move on to the second point, which is it's a kind of a booster, but it's not really a main point. The second one is Jack Black. So you take this guy, right, who's very fun, he's very well liked, he's a successful actor, he's good at voice acting, as you can see by like Po from Kung Fu Panda. He's really great at that character. But overall, Jack Black has been able to play a variety of different characters, from a mass wrestler to a reject rocker who takes over a classroom in a school, to, honestly, this is probably one of the movies that not many people have seen, but it's called Bernie, about a guy and his toxic relationship with someone that he kind of tries to help take care of, who's an elderly lady. And there are a bunch of other movies that Jack Black has been in. Oh, like Jumanji. He's fabulous. But let's go back to School of Rock, which is the one where he's the kind of reject rocker of a rock band. He's trying to get his fame. He gets kicked out of his band because they don't like him. Partially kind of goes crazy, right? A little bit, you know, like he's not what they want. And so anyways, to that, right? So the elements of Peaches kind of call to that, kind of that rock, which I will go into in a second, but it kind of calls into that rock element. Although this song is very ballady, it's what I would describe as a power ballad, which I will get to in just a moment. Part of that in my head was, oh, School of Rock, right? And that rocker character, and Jack Black is into music, and he's able to actually, I think, play pretty decently. And then they had that cool video of where they had a reunion of School of Rock, and it was cool. It was cool. And so anyways, that kind of creates an extra element. It's a little added bonus, like something in the middle, but it wasn't a huge element of it, but I still think that it was helpful. The third element, let's look at it. This song really sings like a power ballad, right? And I think that's just such a crucial part of the song's success and how it integrates into the movie and creates the feeling that it wants, right? And so let's take it back. So we take the first, I'm going to start from the back. So we got power, ballad. Let's start with ballad, okay? So ballad, right? Ballad, it's a sweet song, right? It's usually a love song. It's singing about someone that you care about usually, right? You know, it's like Elvis Presley, I can't help falling in love with you, right? Or fly me to the moon, right? Stuff like that, right? Singing about someone that you really, really care about, right? Professing your love to them, right? Taking that vulnerability that men don't typically show and letting it out, just like I'm professing my love to you, right? And that's where Peaches starts, with that ballad element. But then let's fast forward, and then you start to get into the rock and roll, and men start to like, I want to rock, right? You go into kind of more, I want to rock and roll all night, which I jumped a couple decades, but the point still stands is that rock was blossoming, and you get into like the 70s and 80s, and of course the 80s is when like I want Kiss, I want to rock and roll all night. That's when that comes in. So it's not quite there yet, but like you get into different rock bands that start to take off, like Boston, or in the more harder scene you got Black Sabbath. But anyways, so Boston is a great example that I can use here because they have a song that's titled similarly to Peaches, and they were more of a rock band. Although they weren't quite as into the hard rock, they were still there. And so that really matches with this, right? So you take Boston, right? And sure, they've got some softer songs and like More Than a Feeling, but anyways, so they have a song that's called Amanda, right? Amanda, take you by surprise and make you realize, Amanda. Or like example, and I think this one actually fits really well because I know a lot more of the music of Journey, right? So you take music from like Journey, right? Where they're a rock band coming out of the 70s. Just a small town girl, right? Living in a lonely world. And so it's a little bit more of a harder rock, right? Very loud and kind of in your face, right? And I'm sure they have stuff that's harder. But in any event, right, they have that. And so then you take Steve Perry, right? He goes on his own. He does a song called Oh Sherry. He's like, oh Sherry, our love, right? And that's a perfect example that really attaches to the concept behind this song, Peaches, right? It's a guy, right? So you take that rock, that very hard, masculine, that's what it is, right? You know, it's a person who's very masculine, and they're playing guitar, and they're smashing the drums, and they're really bringing it out, right? And they're very masculine, they party hard, they do strong things, right? But then you take that, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna be softer, I'm gonna sing about how I love this girl, right? And that is a great example of what Oh Sherry is, right? I'm professing my love to you, I'm being vulnerable, it's sweet, it's a serenade, serendipity, right? It's, you know, it's the inner feelings, they're becoming very vulnerable because guys just they're not vulnerable. And so it just kind of opens up your heart. And that's what really Peaches captures, is you take this kind of strength, right? And Peaches isn't incredibly rocky, but it does definitely kind of, it grabs onto that to some degree, right? That kind of strength, right? Bowser's a very strong guy. He's a dragon. He's got a turtle shell, but he's a dragon, and he's strong, and he's powerful, breathes fire. He's big, right? He's strong, he's manly, he's masculine, right? But then he's singing this love song, right, to this woman he loves. And even though he's kind of a creep, and he kidnaps her, right, and he's kind of a terrible person, you know, it still creates that beautiful connection. It's like, this is kind of amazing. And in some ways, it's kind of cheesy, right? It's like villains singing a love song, but it really resonates because it's able to take that masculinity and power and honestly make him a little bit more of a relatable character. Ultimately, he's a bad guy and he does really bad things, and so it doesn't really matter how well he sings that song. But it creates that because of the foundations that I laid, right? Where you have the nostalgia that kind of, and the relationship that you know that Peach and Bowser have, but the idea of a power ballad like the strength and masculinity, but the vulnerability that comes out when you really embrace that power ballad, right? And you start singing about someone that you deeply care about, right? You know, like Aerosmith, and I don't want to miss a thing, 'cause even when I dream of you, the sweetest dream will never do, 'cause I still miss you, babe, and I don't want to miss a thing, right? And that's the beauty of this song and what they were able to capture. They were able to take the strength and masculinity and strongness of Bowser and open them up in a very simple, like less than 2-minute way, right? You know, because they were banking off of what power ballads were, which was strength and masculinity and power becoming vulnerable. And I thought it was just an excellent use of such a concept. And it created a beautiful moment in the movie. I thought it was a fabulous decision. And I'm glad that they did it. So anyways, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Please like, comment what you thought of this video, comment what you thought of this movie and the song, the whole 9 yards, and subscribe. I'll see you all later.